This is K9WLW with a new video. What I want to go over in this video is how to set up a Raspberry Pi to control an ICOM IC705 in terminal mode or external terminal mode. So you can actually use a Raspberry Pi, no hotspot or MMDVM hat, just the Pi itself, as the computer plugged into the side of the IC705, and with Pi-Star software you can actually link to all the repeaters, all the reflectors of D-Star that you have available on an ordinary Pi-Star hotspot, only without transmitting over the air, without an external antenna, just a data cable running from the IC705 into the Raspberry Pi. Now the cable doesn't have to be anything with any weird configurations or adapters. All you need is a cable that's micro USB on the IC705 end. And the Raspberry Pi I'm using here is a Raspberry Pi 4B. And the 4B, like the 3Bs, has the 4 USB jacks on the end. So I have a data cable with a regular USB jack on one end with a micro USB on the end going into the radio over there. So I've already downloaded the Pi-Star image. I've configured it to my Wi-Fi. The first thing you have to do that's different than setting up a Pi-Star hotspot is you change the control software. It usually defaults to Simplex Node MMDVM host. That's where you start to set it up as a hotspot. You've got all your digital modes. Again, we're using this for D-Star terminal mode, only D-Star. So we switch this MMDVM host to D-Star repeater. And then it gives me a warning. After applying your configurations, you need to power cycle your Pi. So we just reboot it. So we hit OK. So we've got D-Star repeater highlighted, Simplex Node, and then hit Apply Changes. And wait for it to respond. Now, being a Pi 4B, it'll move a little quicker than a Raspberry Pi Zero W. So that's helpful when you do apply changes. It's not lightning fast, but I'm sure you all remember the Zero Ws are pretty slow when you do apply changes. Okay, it gives me a warning here. It's nothing to panic about. It says the modem selection has been updated. Please reselect your modem mode from the list. So you just hit OK. OK. And then you basically make a few configurations. I'm going to make this short. Okay. I'm going to leave that as Pi-Star. Of course, you got to put your own call sign in here, so I'm going to put mine in. I apologize for my camera work. I'm holding a camera with one hand while I type with the other, so bear with me. Okay. You don't have to change the frequency because remember, we're not transmitting over the air, so you can just leave it at the default 438, 800. You don't even have to change the latitude, longitude, your town, your country. You can if you want, but you really don't have to. Okay, leave this private. I leave the APRS off. I'm not sure which APRS to select. You can even ignore that. I changed the time zone. So let me click on that. In fact, let me slide down the page here a little bit so I can move this up higher. So basically, you put in the call sign. This is the very minimum. Change the time zone. I go to America. I'm in Eastern time, so I look for America, New York. There's way too many time zones in here, but what are you going to do? Where's New York? Hello. There we go. So America, New York. I turn the time announcements off. I'm not a fan of that. I leave the default reflector as 1 Charlie, but I change it to manual so every time it boots up it doesn't link. It'll just boot up unlinked. And then I change the IRC-DDB gateway language from English UK, English US. I turn the old call sign routing on. That's just a personal preference. You don't have to do that. And I leave the D plus for XRF off, and now I hit apply changes. So again, not a whole lot to the initial setup. Okay, so we apply changes, we wait for that to occur. Let's take a look and see where we are now, and it's giving me that warning because I haven't set a modem mode yet, but that's okay. We'll get to that. Okay, let's make sure everything's in there. My call sign's in there. I don't turn the APRS on. America, New York, English. Oh, dashboard language, I'm going to change to English US. I forgot that there. There we go. Probably doesn't matter. UK, US, English is English. Okay. Anyway, so I'll apply changes again. Now you'll notice there's no, DMR, fusion switch, or anything like that. There's, again, this is a D-Star only device, the way this is configured, so you don't have to worry about those modes at all. You do have your D-Star configuration here, your default reflector. I forgot to mention RPT1. I like to use a different RPT1. We tend to use B on 70 centimeters, C on 2 meters, A on 23 centimeters. Well, we're not using anything, so I'm going to use D for digital, I guess. I used the B on my Raspberry Pi hotspot, so I'm going to put D. I'm going to hit apply changes here. So I'm going to be K9WLWB on my Pi-Star hotspot. I'm going to be K9WLW module D on terminal mode. So sorry about all these pop-up warnings. Okay, now this is where things get a little bit dicey, and this is where you're going to have to pay very close attention because there's some code. There's the radio modem type in the general configuration. The radio, there's my pointer. Okay, right now it's blank, and that's one of the reasons that warning pop-up keeps coming on. Now this is where if you were using a hotspot, you would pick the type of MMDVM hat you're using and so forth. Well, remember, we're not using one. What we're wanting in this list is something called ICOM radio terminal mode. It does not exist in the general configuration. We have to go into the Pi and insert some special code into it in the SSH, and I'm going to go through the steps of that. It's a little tedious. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. It's just tedious. Once you've done this and configure it, you can reboot it, and it should be ready for terminal mode. But let me get it set up for that because I need to open up another website to show you where you can paste some of the information from. So let me pause right here. Okay, with the Pi rebooting, I just set a reboot on it. I want you to open up a second tab on your computer. I've got the Pi over here on the first tab. On the second tab, I forgot to mention this, you want to go to a website known as KLOP Solutions, KLOP.solutions. And when you get to that web page, go across the top and you'll see something called amateur. Well, you can actually go to the search item. And what you want to do is in the search item, type in IC705 and hit the enter key. And it should bring you to a page addressing the IC705, terminal mode, and Pi-Star. Now in here it has some information about terminal mode in the 705 with Raspberry Pi. So, and then it has a read more. So click on the read more. Yes, I found it. You click on the read more and it gives you a very technical explanation on why the Raspberry Pi doesn't work well with the 705 in terminal mode and what the fix is. So we're going to actually make a small modification to the Raspberry Pi in order to allow it to work properly. Basically, when you get down the page, you'll get to this area with this weird looking red text. There's some text that says ICOM TA4100, and then about 4 lines below that you see # or tick hash or pound added for IC705, and then this weird code that goes across your screen. You want to leave this tab set up so that you can go to this area here. The reason that is you're going to edit and paste this information, this added for IC705, everything in the bottom several lines here. That information you'll copy and you're going to end up pasting somewhere in the Raspberry Pi programming, and I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. Anyway, that's why I have a separate tab. Okay, so back to the Raspberry Pi. Okay, if we go to the admin page, we're going to notice, okay, it wants us to do an upgrade. I believe it's already updated to 2022, May 15th. So first, before we do anything, we're going to do an upgrade. So we want to go to configuration. We're going to want to go to, let me get rid of the warning. We're going to do an expert. So let me go to expert. Sorry if my camera worked. So now I've went from configuration to expert, and I'm going to do an upgrade because right now I'm running Pi 415 and it's telling me to upgrade to the latest version. So I'm going to hit upgrade. And this is pretty easy. It only takes a few seconds, and then you'll see it detected 415 running, blah, blah, blah. And then it switched to 416. It detected that. And then it says you are already running the latest version. So this upgraded it to 416. It still says 415, but as soon as you go back to configuration, oops, hold on, I got that warning, the modem warning. You'll see it's 416. So now we've upgraded to 416. The dashboard is 2022 May 12th, which is the most recent dashboard. I mean, we can try and update just to see if it changes to May 12th. Updates are pretty easy, pretty quick, so why not give it a spin? And it probably won't change the date, but you never know. It's updating host files. And it should be done here. Finished. So now we can go back to configuration and we hit OK. Okay, this is the tricky part, so you want to follow with me very carefully. And I know this video is going to take a little longer because of its tediousness. And again, I want it to be at a slow enough pace so that it's easy to follow. Because if I rush through this, it's going to be, a lot of people are going to miss some of the steps. Okay, the next step, now that we've done the upgrades and the updates, we don't have the modem mode for terminal mode available. We wanted to fix the Raspberry Pi so that it will do that. So now you want to go to the expert page, click on that, and this is an area that's kind of weird to go into. It's called SSH access. So you want to click on that. Okay, I'm going to have to read from some notes I took, so I'm a little busy with my hands here. So please bear with my camera work. it takes you to a black screen that says Pi-Star Login. All right, so what you do here is the login is pi hyphen or dash, not underscore, dash. Hang on, I'm trying to find dash on this thing. Dash star, S-T-A-R. Okay, so you type in Pi-Star, you hit enter. Now it wants the password. The password is raspberry. So I'm going to pause while I type that because you don't have to see me type it. Okay, it jumped ahead. I typed in Pi-Star, pi-star, enter, raspberry, enter, and it immediately jumps to this next screen. And this is where you want to be very, very careful with what you type. It's got to be precise. Okay, first command, you have the cursor blinking down here. You want to type in all small case, RPI. That's Romeo Papa India. Hyphen or dash. RW, Romeo Whiskey. So RPI dash RW, you hit the enter key. Next, you type in sudo, S-U-D-O, space, bash, B-A-S-H. So sudo bash. You now hit enter. Okay, the next command you enter here is you type nano, N-A-N-O, space, /, etc, UDEV, /. So that would be nano, N-A-N-O, space, / etc, UDEV, /. Now don't hit the enter key, because I know we've done a few enters. In this case, you have to hit the tab key, which is usually down here on the left of your keyboard. Hit the tab key twice. Once, twice. And it takes you to the next command that you type. And this is where it gets a little wonky, and you got to be precise here. Okay, we're going to have to be, keystrokes have to be perfect. R-U-L-E-S, rules, .d, rules.d, / 100 hyphen or dash, Pi-Star, P-I-S-T-A-R. Now this time there's no hyphen in Pi-Star. There's a hyphen before it, but not in the middle. That's important to know. Okay, so Pi-Star dot rules, R-U-L-E-S. Okay. Then you hit enter. And you'll see that it has the rules for the ICOM 4100 for terminal mode already installed in the Pi-Star image. What we're going to do here is we're going to hit the down arrow until we get to the first blank line, and that's as far down as it goes. Now this is where it gets a little wonky, especially when you're trying to film. Remember that other tab that we had with the code. This ICOM 4100 code is already there, but it's already in the Pi-Star image. What we want to do is we want to add this bottom part where it says added for IC 705 and all this other code. We're going to enter this all in. So I'm going to pause here so I can edit and paste with two hands. Okay, I did a control, I highlighted and dragged my cursor over all this code here and highlighted it. That's just all in blue. And then I hit Control C to copy it, and then I go tab back to the first tab, which is the Raspberry Pi, and I hit Control V, and this little pop-up appears. So it says paste from browser. You click on that, and a little box appears, and you put Control V to paste all that code into that box. It doesn't show the whole code there, but it's in there. And then you hit OK. You hit OK. And you'll see now the IC705 code has now been added to this screen. That was the tricky part. Now that it's edited and pasted in there, you want to then hit Control X. Okay. And then you hit Y for yes. And then enter. And then you hit type exit, E-X-I-T, enter. And then I think you type exit one more time, enter, and it says session closed. So we're done with writing all that code in that we needed. So we want to go back to the configuration page. And again, we're going to search for the information that we needed. Okay, supposedly this will add under radio modem type in the configuration, the ICOM okay, apparently it didn't add yet, so I probably need to reboot it. So bear with me while I do a power, and let me see if it appears. Okay, I've rebooted. Now I forgot to mention in this video, again, this is kind of complicated, and I know this is a lot more complicated than most of my videos. So, and again, this is a kind of a wonky process. I forgot to mention that you want to plug in the radio to the Pi with the cable, and you want to set it to terminal mode on the radio. And I don't recall, again, this video is so convoluted, I forgot whether I showed you how to do that or not. Well, I think I did do that earlier, so never mind. Again, I apologize, this is going all over the place. There's a lot of steps in this, and we're getting there. Anyway, I rebooted the Pi Star. And the radio modem type is still undetermined. What we're wanting to do is fix this with that little code process we did. And we're looking for one at the very top now. With that code applied and with a reboot, it now has ICOM radio in terminal mode, D-star repeater only. That's the modem mode we want to use. And it didn't exist until we went through all that code. So I'm going to hit that. I'm going to hit apply changes. So ICOM radio in terminal mode, D-star repeater only. Hit apply changes. And do a waiting game. And it'll reconnect. Let me get rid of this pop-up. Again, I'm sorry, my videos are normally not quite this long. This is just one of the more complicated ones. I'm telling you, it's worth it if you want to have external terminal mode with a Raspberry Pi and your 705, because you can run your 705 without an antenna and just go through the cable. For example, let's say you're in the field, you have a HF antenna plugged into the output. Well, you don't want to switch to a VHF, a UHF antenna to run a hotspot. Why not have the data cable plugged into a Raspberry Pi, connected to your Wi-Fi and your cell phone? You can just switch between RF section of the radio to do your HF or whatever, pop a button, go into terminal mode through the cable without having to switch or change an antenna. It's pretty convenient. Okay, so I have the terminal mode set up. Now I'm going to do another power up and reboot, and we'll see if it'll be ready to go. So let me pause while it reboots. Okay, I've rebooted it again. And I have, of course, the radio configured for terminal mode external. Let's give it a test and see if it works here. I'm going to do a link command to 1Charlie and just a quick kerchunk or push to talk to see if it'll link in.
Link to RES001 Charlie.
There you go. It linked into 1Charlie. Use reflector CQ, which is kind of nice. You just click the multi-mode knob, one counter click, and it'll load use reflector after you've done a link. Okay, let's give a shout on 1Charlie. It's 4 a.m. East Coast time, so everyone in the U.S. is probably darn near asleep. And hopefully I'll have someone in the UK or Europe or something that might be up and about. So let's see if anyone hears me. This is K9WLW calling for a radio check. I've set up a terminal mode on an IC705. Does anybody copy me on the reflector? This is K9WLW testing out terminal mode on an IC705. Does anybody copy me on the reflector? Well, 4 a.m. I guess this wasn't the best time to try this, but 1Charlie, I figured there'd be some UK stations or somebody awake. It is connected, and I can clearly see it is connected to 1Charlie. It shows up on the admin page, so you'll have to take my word for it. It's linked to 1Charlie. Whoops. Sorry about that. D+, direction outgoing, and of course you can select reflectors from here if you so desire, or you can do it from the radio, or you can use IRC DDB remote to also change it. I've tested that and it does work. But as you can see, there's no antenna coming out of the radio. That's in external terminal mode. The Raspberry Pi is working. And again, I know this was a clumsy video, very difficult video, one of my most difficult because of the complexity. I hope all of that came through, and I please hope that everyone was patient enough to make it through this almost 30-minute video. But it is in terminal mode, and just to get out of terminal mode, you hit Menu, DV Gateway, Normal Mode, and your radio goes back to where it was before. Or you can go to VFO, or you can go back to, I don't know what it's doing here. I'll go back to Menu, DV Gateway, Terminal Mode with the external. And Let me do a Kerchunk here and see if it's still showing 1 Charlie on the response. I just keyed up. Shows my K9WLWD linked to 1 Charlie. So it is linked. There's just nobody there wanting to shout at me. But I promise you it will work. You can link to anything that you can think of with D-Star. All your link commands, just like it was a Pi-Star hotspot, work. Even IRC-DDB remote works. And hopefully I will get the code for how to do this for an ID52 if you want to operate that in terminal mode. Apparently there's another website or another place to get the code for that I have to do some research on, and you can paste that into the SSH that we went through, that complicated part, and it will work on an ID52 as well. So that's the trickiness of it. Very few people, I think, have actually gone through all this to complete it, but it works with the Raspberry Pi. I like it better than Doozy because you can also link to individual repeaters on Pi-Star. You cannot do that with Doozy. And also Doozy requires a PC, whereas this only requires a Raspberry Pi, a much smaller device to carry. And this would work in a mobile environment as well. So anyway, I hope that was worth it. It's super late. I know that was super complicated and super bad camera work. I get that. It's hard to do this with a cell phone camera and a computer and a radio in one hand. So please, please be forgiving of my poor camera work. I really hope the information was accurate enough and easy enough to follow, because if you follow every step, it should work. Again, it's tedious, but it's worth having it. It's been fun playing with this feature. Anyway, that's it for now. I am tired, and I certainly hope that this was worth the effort for those of you that were interested in terminal mode on the IC705 with a Raspberry Pi. 73s for now, until the next video. This is K9WLW signing off.